Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we are back with something that is incredibly cool. It's a model I've been wanting to get my hands on for years, and I finally have gotten a hold of one. This is the Kaiyodo Revoltech Tyrannosaurus Rex. This is obviously the Lost World Jurassic Park version of the T-Rex. But I've been wanting this T-Rex for a very long time, and I'm super happy to finally be able to get a hold of one. I recently saw someone selling it on Mercari for fairly cheap overall compared to what most asking prices are for this one. So I snagged it right away and, now have it here to take a look at. And of course it did come with the box, which is really exciting. You can see again the Lost World Jurassic Park logo here on the underside. Looks like we've got like some assembly instructions potentially right there. Here on the side, another sort of sneak peek at the T-Rex. On the back, a whole bunch of images of it and everything back here showing some of its posability, and then here on the other side some information. Now it does open up, but everything seems to be like everywhere in there. It looks like even the jaw fell off currently, so I'm going to have to put that back on. But there is definitely some really cool stuff over here on the other side that sadly I cannot read, but we've got some Lost World Jurassic Park images and everything over here, which is super cool. So I'm going to go ahead, open the box up, and then we're going to bring everything in. So included within, we've got this little sort of booklet in here, which just basically shows off some random stuff that I'm not too interested in looking at currently. But we do also have the inside of the box, which we can see does feature alternate feet. So you can replace the feet that you have here with more of like a sort of walking closed toe sort of look. And there's also this little Revoltech box sort of thing going on up here as well. Not sure exactly what that's for, but I'm not too interested in that currently either. But then when it comes to our actual model, we do have a base with it, which is really cool. It also has some trees. The one thing about this model, which is I think maybe one of the reasons why it was a little bit discounted, is that one of the trees is broken. The piece, you can see there's like a little piece that comes out of the top of the tree. It's broken off and it's missing from the set, but I don't mind that at all. That's such a minor thing, and if I was really super picky about it, I could probably just sculpt one out or something. But I'm not. But what's really crazy is the trees are even articulated. That's absolutely insane. So you can move the trees around to sort of display them however you would like, which is pretty interesting. Don't think I've ever seen something like that before. And then we of course have our Tyrannosaurus Rex itself, and that is actually so much better in hand than I ever expected it to be. I've seen so many images of this guy over the years that, I've fairly familiar with it, but I always felt like it had a little bit of an awkward look because of all of the different articulated joints, like the ball joints and stuff, which are kind of Takara Tomy-like. And I feel like that was one of the reasons why I never instantly pursued this as relentlessly as I probably should have. That and the fact that it's always been very pricey, so it's just something that I wasn't, crazy about getting, but I've always wanted to get. But now having it here, it is actually so much nicer than I ever expected it to be. It is a super cool looking version of a Jurassic Park style T-Rex, and they've done a great job, honestly, in capturing the likeness of a Jurassic Park T-Rex. Even better than I was expecting. So bringing the T-Rex up, I will say when it comes to a super articulated Jurassic Park T-Rex, this one is definitely that's for sure. So starting here in the head sculpt, you can see the head sculpt does actually have some pretty impressive skin texture. Again, it's actually really well done, and I also quite like the paintwork. Obviously, the colors of this don't perfectly replicate, the Lost World Jurassic Park Tyrannosaurus, but I think, they've got kind of like the basic gist of it, but in a more generic kind of a way. But here in the face, you can see again that you do, focus camera, there we go, have some decent paintwork and some decent skin texture. We can see the nostrils up there. We can also see a little bit of a darkened color there around the eye. We have like a green eye, it looks like, and then a black pupil. Maybe it's a yellowish green sort of tone. I don't know. We have a lighter tone for the lower jaw. Looks like we also have a wash present on the figure so that it helps to bring the detail out pretty nicely. As you open the mouth, you can see, of course, we have an articulated jaw like you would expect. You've got some pretty decent paintwork for the inside of the mouth, as well as you've got like a pinkish tone there that transitions pretty nicely in. You also, of course, have a pinkish tone there for the tongue, which we can see on the inside of the mouth, and some pretty darn decent looking detail throughout the course of the inside of the mouth, as well as a gloss coat helping it shine and look pretty realistic. And the teeth look really nice. For the most part, they have a bit of a genuine sharp look to them, and they're painted with like a white sort of a tone, which is also really quite nicely done overall. And we can see the eye again over here on this side, which is pretty nicely painted as well. Again, a little bit of variation of color here with like a slightly lighter shade of green running along the jawline of the T-Rex. And the jaw works pretty nicely. As you can see, it closes nicely, opens nicely, which is definitely a plus for the figure as well. And I would say that they definitely captured the likeness of a Jurassic Park T-Rex head sculpt. The only thing that looks a little bit questionable to me is the size of the lower jaw. The lower jaw definitely looks a bit too big and bulky, but for the most part, I think it looks all right. Up here on the top of the head, you can see again some more pretty nice looking detail. Leading back, you do have a nice spot of articulation right here, which can swivel, so you can get some nice head tilts and stuff for the T-Rex, depending on the pose you want to give it. You also have another spot right here, which articulates, basically swivels around and stuff, helping you to turn the head of the T-Rex. And then you've got another spot right here, which goes forward and back. And I don't know if it swivels. No, just forward and back. So overall, you can basically get, and also, of course, the head can go up and down like that. So you can basically get whatever pose you want. You know, if you want the T-Rex kind of like with its head out and roaring, or with its head up like this and roaring. It does look super awkward though, because again, the areas disconnect and then it looks very strange. Again, one of the weird things about this figure that sort of, stopped me from relentlessly searching this one out years ago. But again, here in hand, I actually quite like it a lot more than I was expecting to. But as you move down, you can see again some pretty impressive skin texture with some yellowish brown sort of tones here moving along the side. You also have variations of green. There's this nice dark green, almost like a military green, that moves along the back of the T-Rex, but there's a little bit of a lighter green that sort of stripes through. You can see it in the neck. Focus camera. You can see it in the neck, but it's a little harder to notice until you move down into the body, and you can see it a bit nicer down here. But as you lead down, again, you have some patterning that picks up, like some dark brown that sort of starts to stripe down. That as well becomes a lot more noticeable once you get into the body, and you can really see it right here moving through. The transition between the green to this yellowish sort of tone for the side of the dinosaur is also pretty darn smooth. As you lead down, you do, of course, have the arms of the T-Rex. They are the darker green, which there's kind of an abrupt transition where it sort of fades away but then picks back up instantly in the arms. So that looks a little bit strange, but not too bad. But as you move down, the arms look pretty decent overall. You can see the fingers sculpted out, the nails as well, painted with a nice glossy black, which is a plus. And the arms, of course, do have articulation. They can go forward and back. They can swivel as well. I'm not entirely sure what all of the articulation does on the figure. It also can move out like left and right. So there is definitely some nice mobility in the arm of the T-Rex. Well, the arms, because it does have two of them. But as you move back, if we move the leg out of the way, you can see the rib cage and everything here for the T-Rex. Some more very impressive skin texture, some skin wrinkles and stuff as you lead down into the lower part of the stomach. And this is one area that really impressed me when capturing the likeness of a Jurassic Park T-Rex that so many companies miss, is this very trademark style of scales that moves along the underbelly of a JP Rex, and they captured it perfectly on this one, in my opinion. That is an absolutely awesome addition to this model. You can also really make out the brown wash that they've applied to the underside of the T-Rex when we look down there. And then as you move back up, you can see the spinal column again following along the back of the dinosaur. Some more of the different variations of greens. You can see the scoots moving over the hip bone, which is again something you would want to see on a Jurassic Park T-Rex. Leading down into the leg, we can get a nice sense of the musculature, some more variation of color with different shades of greens kind of leading back to a lighter tone on the back of the thigh. We have more of that patterning as we move down, and then we obviously have the legs in a bit of a weird position currently. But as you lead down, you can see the calf muscle and everything. Pretty smooth application of the paint, and then you lead down into the feet, and as we lead down, we can see the scoots here running down the foot down into the toes. We can also see they are highlighted with a darker tone, and then we again have the nails painted with a nice glossy black, and yes, even the dew claws are painted, which I see over there. But as far as the leg articulation goes, obviously it can go forward and back, It's definitely got a clickiness to it. Yep, can come out away from the body as well. So to kind of show you that, it does come out away from the body. We have the knee, again, forward and back. And I'm thinking it can swivel. Yeah, definitely. It's just a little stiff currently, but it can swivel. Then you've got a spot down here, which is just forward and back, and then the ball joint at the foot, which can go forward and back and swivel and basically all over the place, giving you the ability to really nicely display your T-Rex in like running poses and stuff like that, but the ball joint does look awkward. And then as you move back into the tail, we can see a little bit of extra articulation right here, which can go left and right, and also up and down, but it seems like, I was going to say, it seems like the tail's working its way off, so we can very clearly see how the tail goes on, basically just slides in there, but it does allow you to, again, kind of articulate the tail a little bit more, but it does slide off. You do also have a wire tail just for some extra posability on the T-Rex, which is pretty cool. As you lead out, pretty much the same style of paint that we've seen through the entire figure with the dark military type green and then the lighter green striping along the top, and then the patterning as we transition to like the yellowish brown, and then the lighter tone on the underside of the tail. The tail definitely seems a bit short to me, which is unfortunate because overall I would say it's a pretty darn cool looking interpretation of a Jurassic Park, or I guess you could say Lost World Jurassic Park T-Rex. But of course you're going to see pretty much the same thing again on both sides. So definitely really neat. And then of course as far as the actual base goes, we just have a nice little earthy area with some footprints that very much so look like an advertisement for Jurassic Park or the Lost World Jurassic Park. We also have some random ball joints in there, so I assume that that somehow pops into the feet to help it display. I don't really know for sure. I haven't done that yet. But we can also see that we've got some ferns and stuff down here, which as well, again, is very Lost World Jurassic Park-ish, considering, that's what you see all over Isla Sorna. And you can as well see some nice variation of color added to the base with some darker tones and a little bit of a glossy look to sort of give it the look of it raining, like we do see in one of the key scenes of the Tyrannosaurs in the Lost World Jurassic Park. And then as you move back, again, you've got the trees, which are sculpted pretty nicely, painted pretty nicely as well. Again, definitely very cool looking. My camera doesn't want to focus on them. There we go. A little dusty currently, so I guess I'm going to have to clean it off at some point. And then you have the information on the underside. So I'm going to go ahead, see if I can get my T-Rex to stand here on the base. So I tried to get it on the base, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, I'm definitely having some trouble doing so. Those little kind of like pegs there on the base don't pop into the feet very easily, so I don't know if I need to warm it up or what, but I just decided to try to get it to stand, and the legs buckle in most of the positions that I was putting it in, but as you can see, you can get it to stand. It just kind of has to be sometimes in a little bit of an awkward position, but it seems like mostly it's like the ankles and stuff that sort of buckle once you put the weight on them, so it is what it is. I'm going to try to measure it in the position it's currently in. For a length, you are looking at about 7 3/4 inches, maybe just shy of that, or around 19.5 centimeters. And then for a height in the position it's currently in, about 2 3/4 inches, or around 7 centimeters. But obviously, seeing as this one is quite articulated, you could reposition it pretty much any way you want. But for a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being next to our Kaiyodo Revoltech Tyrannosaurus Rex. And you can see, again, the figure's really quite small. Overall, this is definitely one of the smallest super articulated figures that I think I have in my collection, and definitely one of the smaller Jurassic Park Tyrannosaurs. Not the smallest, because obviously we've got minis and all that sort of stuff. I would say this one, if I had them out, would be slightly larger than those like 5-inch or 6-inch basic figures, the smaller basics that Mattel released years back. I would say it's kind of similar to that in size, but a little bit bigger. I just wish I had some of those out. Those ones I don't really keep out usually, so you'll just have to take my word on that, I guess. But for another comparison, to try to continue to give you an idea of the size of this, here we have a Mattel Velociraptor, and we can see the T-Rex is actually a little bit smaller than a Mattel Velociraptor. So that definitely helps to show you that, again, this is definitely one of the smaller versions of a JP T-Rex on the market. But then for one more comparison here that I think will continue to give you an idea of the size, you can very clearly see with some minis in here, a Mattel and Captives minifigure, that the T-Rex is clearly not in minifigure size range. And here's a comparison that probably won't be helpful to everyone, but I felt like it would be a good one to bring in if you happen to have it. This is the Marco Makes JP 30th Anniversary T-Rex that he had released a little ways back. It's a lot smaller than like a Rubbersaurus type figure. And as you can see, it's kind of similar in size to this version of the T-Rex, being just a little bit bigger. So this Kaiyodo Super Articulated Revoltech Tyrannosaurus Rex is a pretty cool figure. Again, it's a lot nicer in person than I was expecting it to be. Is it a masterpiece? Not at all. Is it the best version of a Jurassic Park T-Rex on the market? Definitely not. But is it a pretty fun, very articulated, quite different style version of a T-Rex? Yeah, absolutely. I think it is pretty neat. Again, the articulation and everything about it is just a little different feeling than most other articulated Tyrannosaurs on the market. And that's probably because this one was released quite a ways back, obviously, considering it is the Lost World Jurassic Park. And most figures weren't really this articulated, especially when it comes to dinosaurs at the time that this was released. So it's kind of like the early stages of what we now are like obsessed with, which is, you know, really articulated dinosaur figures. And I think they did a pretty good job of coming up with some very smooth articulation. It looks awkward, but it works well. It allows you to almost pose the T-Rex in pretty close to any and every way I could imagine. It's just that when you do pose it, a lot of the time, like the parts kind of disconnect and look awkward. So it's very cool that you have so much posability with this figure, but it does come at a price because, again, it looks a little bit strange depending on the way you pose it. But that said, it does seem to work pretty nicely. The sculpt overall is very nicely done, and I'm actually quite impressed with how accurate overall of a job they did when it comes to catching the fine details of a Jurassic Park T-Rex. And, like the scales on the underside of the belly and even the scales moving over the hip, like they've captured all of that on this T-Rex, which is really cool. The paint apps on this are okay. They're not super impressive and they don't quite replicate the way a Jurassic Park T-Rex looks perfectly, but for what it is, a mass-produced articulated toy, I think it's pretty cool, just not incredible by any means. And the fact that it does come with a base and alternate feet is really neat as well. So if you are interested in grabbing one of these and adding it to your collection, unfortunately it is a pricey figure to get a hold of, and most times I can see this one well over $100. Sometimes I see it a little under $100, but not all that often. So if you do want it, I would say search it out. And if you can find it for a decent price, it's worth adding to your collection, especially considering it is an actual licensed Jurassic Park super articulated figure. So check eBay, Mercari, any of those places. Hopefully you'll stumble upon one for a decent price. Grab it if you can, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.